Singing Without Change. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A U.S. military judge dismissed the argument Friday that Guantanamo's youngest prisoner, Omar Khadr, was a child soldier when captured in Afghanistan and therefore in need of protection and not prosecution. U.S. Army Colonel Peter Brownback's ruling clears the way for Omar Khadr's trial, which will be the first war crimes trial in history of anyone under the age of 18. The Toronto-born 21-year-old now was 15 when he was shot and captured after a fight with U.S. Special Forces in Afghanistan. He was first detained at Bagram Air Base, then transferred to Guantanamo. The Pentagon charged Khadr with 5 war crimes, including murder for the death of a U.S. soldier who was fatally wounded by a hand grenade. Khadr is scheduled to appear for a pretrial hearing in Guantanamo next week. Michelle Shepard is the national security reporter for the Toronto Star. She's been following Khadr's story since his arrest in 2002. Her new book traces the story of Omar Khadr's life. It's called Guantanamo's Child, The Untold Story of Omar Khadr. She joins us now from Toronto. She is now doing her first U.S. broadcast interview on this book. Thanks very much for joining us, Michelle. Tell us who Omar Khadr is.
Omar Khadr is the second youngest son of an Egyptian-Canadian named Ahmed Syed Khadr, who came to Canada, studied here, and during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan went as a charity worker. After the Soviets were defeated, he stayed on and continued his work, eventually aligning himself with many of al-Qaeda's elite. Omar and his siblings grew up between Canada, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, shuttled back and forth. And when, as you mentioned, when he was 15, after 9/11, his family had fled, and he was caught in a firefight with U.S. Special Forces. He was shot and captured, and he has been detained since. He's 21 now.
How did you end up getting involved with Omar Khadr?
I've been following the story since his capture, and I always found it an incredible story. His upbringing itself is like, you can't compare it to anything. But what struck me most about his case was his age. The fact that he was 15 when he was captured, and that his age had not been taken into consideration. And that's, for me, what separates his case from the others at Guantanamo. So I'd been following the case for the newspaper for almost 6 years now, and I just felt I couldn't get the whole story in, so I decided to write a book on it.
Talk about what you know happened to Omar Khadr at the age of 15 when he was picked up.
Well, unfortunately, we don't know a lot yet. There's many conflicting reports. I interviewed many of the soldiers who were involved that day, and what they've told me is that they received a call from Washington that there had been a satellite phone used that had been picked up by NSA, and that it pinpointed a location in Afghanistan that they were sent to. When they went there, there were 5 men inside a compound, or what they believed were to be 5 men. When they asked the occupants to come out, they shot 2 of the Afghan soldiers that were with them, and a massive firefight followed, which included air support. At the end of this lengthy firefight, they believed all the occupants were dead inside the compound, and they went in to check the remains. At some point, and there's a sort of crucial 90 seconds rather, that are going to be analyzed if we get to court on this case. At some point during that time, a grenade was thrown that fatally wounded Delta Force soldier Christopher Spear, and the Pentagon alleges that it was Omar who threw that grenade. For 5 years, his culpability was really not in doubt, because the Pentagon had believed he was the only remaining survivor. What we found out this February in a document that was mistakenly disclosed to us when we were at Guantanamo Bay was that there was actually another occupant of that compound that was alive at the time. And the document that we had was written by what we believe was one of the Delta Force soldiers who was there, although he's not identified in the document. He alleges that after the grenade was thrown, he shot one of the occupants in the head and the chest, killing him, and then he shot Omar twice in the back. So at this point, we're not sure if he was the one to actually throw the grenade.
Your first chapter, Michelle Shepard, is called Shoot Me. Why?
at the end of the battle, after Omar had been shot, and there's a picture in the book that I think is very telling. It shows the wounds he had, and there's these two